Have an older but beautiful tree in your yard that you want to stay healthy. If the trunk is too rooted into the ground, you might have problems.
But you can't prevent them. Arborist Dan Trash from Rangers Services in Appleton shows us how to do it in today's Honey-Do.
Good morning. Today we're looking at what to do if you have a tree that you suspect might be in the ground too deep. Now, the importance if a tree is in the ground too deep is things like this can happen. And this is a sample of what they call a stem girdling root. If you take a look at this root, it grows around the trunk of the tree. And it actually acts like a vice grip. As the tree tries to get bigger, its own root chokes off the stem of the tree. This usually happens about 7 to 25, 30 years after the tree's been planted. And the best way to avoid this is to plant the tree correctly. But what do you do if you've inherited the problem and you already have a tree that's too deep in the ground? Today we're going to look at this ironwood tree, and I'm actually going to do what they call a root crown excavation. Now, a lot of this is mulch, so it digs away pretty easily. You can see the line right here of where the soil line was by the coloration. And I've gone down about 3 inches before I start to get what we call the trunk flare, which is on this sample right here, where the roots start to flare out. If you went into the woods and brushed away the leaves and the twigs that are in the forest floor, you'd see this flare. This is how nature wants trees to grow. A lot of times in the planting process, they get in the ground too deep, and unfortunately it can kill them. So this is actually part of the trunk. Since we can't redig this tree, what we do is we excavate the soil back around, getting down to where the trunk starts to flare out. You may have to pull soil off and then put the mulch back on again. When you're mulching, you only want to mulch up about maybe 1 inch on the trunk of the tree. You don't want to be covering it up, making these things that look like little volcanoes, because that can be just as bad. If you look at what I'm excavating here, there aren't any roots coming off here. So this is still the trunk that's planted in the ground. This can be the difference of your tree thriving and living for many more years. And the unfortunate thing is, once a tree's in the ground too deep, if it's left for a bunch of years, you can't really fix it. If it's a younger tree and a smaller tree like this, you can still make a difference with the tree. So one of the ways you tell is you look at the trees in your property. If they go into the ground straight like a telephone pole, you might have a problem. If they flare out at the base, you're going to be in good shape. You can take a look at trees a lot of times when they're leaning, that they don't go in the ground with a flare. They go in the ground straight. So, care for your trees. Don't forget the part that's below the ground.